professors in college was a professor by the name of Professor Freilich. He was our Greek professor, and we loved that man. He was one of these professors who was always saying something wacky and crazy. Like we get to something really hard in Greek, and he'd bury his head in his chest and go, "What were they thinking at the Tower of Babel?" Or we get to something that he was going to teach us that was going to bring us to the next level, and we were going to get to something challenging, and he'd say, "Today is the day you become big Greek boys and girls." And he was one of these professors who knew how to challenge us. He knew how to push us further than we thought we could go. And his love for the Greek language was something that was infectious. And he was one of these guys that you loved him so much, you respected him so much, you didn't want to disappoint him. So you always did your homework, you always worked your hardest, you always did your absolute best because you wanted to do your best for Professor Freilich. And the longer we studied with him, one of the things we learned was that when Professor Freilich learned Greek, he didn't learn it in English, but he learned Greek in German. And this may not sound like a big deal, and you're going, okay, so what? But what we found out was people who learned Greek in German pronounce things just a little bit differently than people who learn Greek in English. And where this became a big deal was when we went to seminary. And when we went to seminary and we were sitting in a class where we were talking about Greek words, or we were reading out of the Greek New Testament together, we'd open up and we'd begin to read, and I would go to read and people would look and go, "Oh, you studied with Professor Freilich." I'd be like, "Why? What are you talking about?" "Well, you said stuff weird." I'm going, "No, I did. That's how I was supposed to say it." But what we began to realize was those of us who studied with Professor Freilich sounded like Professor Freilich. And we pronounced things the way that he did. In many ways, this is what I think about when I hear these words in John chapter 13. Jesus is in the upper room with the disciples. They're getting ready to celebrate the Lord's Supper, and Jesus has just gotten down from his seat and gone down and did the most humiliating thing of all. He got down and he washed each and every one of the disciples' feet. And after he's done this smelly, gross, stinky thing, he sits back down at the table and he looks at his disciples and he says these words: "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another." Jesus is calling us as disciples of Jesus, as followers of Jesus, people who bear the name of Jesus, as we are called Christians, Christ in us. He's saying, I want you to love other people the way that I have loved you. I want to be the distinguishing mark in you is the way that you love other people, so that when they experience your love, when you love them, they can go, "Oh, you've been loved by Jesus." When they experience your love, they can experience the love of Jesus through you, because it's through Jesus and his love that we learn what it is to be loved and how to love other people. For kind of like with Professor Freilich, there's something different about the love of Jesus. Love in our world can be here today and gone tomorrow. It can be based on how we feel or what we want or what we think we're going to get out of the person. But the love of Jesus was very different. Jesus himself said, "Greater love has no one than this, and that he lays down his life for his friends." And what we see on the cross is Jesus laying down his life for us so that we could be his own. It's a love that isn't here today and gone tomorrow, but it's a love that keeps going. It's a love that loves us even when we're unlovable. And it's in this love of Jesus, as we experience it, that we learn what love truly is. It's in this love of Jesus, as we experience this, that we learn how to love other people. And as Jesus is speaking these words in the upper room to his disciples, he's saying, want to know what it looks like to be my disciple? It's to love other people the way that I have loved Whenever I open my mouth to read the Greek New Testament, people can look and go, "Oh, you've been with Professor Freilich." I wonder if they can say the same thing about the way that we love. "Oh, you've been with Jesus."